Welcome to the third webinar, Community Interaction and Recreation. This is being presented by Hydrocephalus Canada and Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Welcome to the youth webinar series sponsored by Sick Kids Foundation. This webinar will focus on community interaction and recreation for youth with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. Our presenters are Kristen English and Melissa Thorne. Kristen will share her insights as a certified therapeutic recreation specialist in the Transitions, Recreation, and Life Skills team at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab. Kristen provides adapted sport and recreation opportunities to children and youth with disabilities, including wheelchair basketball, all ability soccer, and the Access Boom sailing program. She is also a Master of Health Evaluation candidate at the University of Waterloo. Kristen is joined tonight by Melissa Thorne, a member of the Holland Bloorview Alumni Network and youth facilitator at the center. A youth facilitator is a young adult with a childhood onset disability that helps youth and their families transition to adult life. Melissa is also a person with SBNH who lived at Holland Bloorview as an inpatient for a year after having multiple orthopedic surgeries in grade 10. Kristen and Melissa will address how to find meaning in recreation and leisure participation, explore sports and recreation in your community, as well as look at equipment that can be adapted to your needs. Okay, I think we have covered all the basics. So please welcome Kristen and Melissa, and I'll let you ladies take it away.
Thanks, Shauna. And thank you everyone who's joining us this evening to talk about one of my favorite topics, and I believe one of Melissa's favorite topics as well, a fun one. We're going to talk a lot about community interaction through recreation participation. As Shauna said, I work as a therapeutic recreation specialist at Holland Bloorview, and we support children and youth between the ages of 7 all the way up to 18 and sometimes 21 to support them and their families to make sure that everybody is able to identify, access, and participate in activities that mean the most to them. So really looking forward to discussing some of these topics this evening, including what is meaningful recreation and leisure participation, and how do you find that? And then how to explore those sports and recreation activities within your own community. And after that, we're also going to touch on adapted sport and recreation equipment, which is something also really important to us at Holland Bloorview. We support clients and families to access adapted recreation equipment that will help remove barriers and enhance enjoyment of all of these activities. Before we get started, I did want to mention that we're going to be providing lots of different information, ideas, and resources tonight. However, some of those examples may not fit for everybody. So we hope that you can take away some of our general suggestions, ideas, resources that might be applicable to you. But we understand that recreation and leisure looks different and unique for everybody. And that is actually something that Melissa and I are going to chat about as well. With that said, we're going to start by talking about what is recreation and leisure anyway. To us, we think of recreation and leisure as those free time activities when you're free of obligations. So things that you enjoy doing, you choose to do them, and hopefully there's things that you get out of them that make you feel good. And recreation and leisure can be unstructured, or it can be a little bit more organized or structured. So there is, a couple of distinctions and examples between these two different types of recreation experiences. Unstructured activities would be things where you're self-organized, self-directed. In kid terms, we call it free play. I still like to think of that even in our youth and adult years. And some examples of unstructured recreation would be things like going to the park with friends or family. Maybe you like to lift weights or get exercise, walking your dog, or even participating in meditation activities. And then structured, on the other hand, is those more planned, directed, sometimes by other people, and they're a little more time specific. So some examples might be things like if you were to join a chess club, maybe take lessons like swimming lessons, participate on a sports team, or attend a summer camp. So these would all still be examples of recreation. And so that's what we mean whenever we talk about recreational leisure tonight. And as we said, it looks different for everyone. And so we thought we'd kick off this evening by asking you to maybe take a moment for some self-reflection. We're going to ask everybody to think about an activity or two that is important to you, something that you like to do in your free time. Now, once you've thought about what that activity is, then I'm going to ask you to also reflect on something that we don't always ask ourselves, which is, why does that activity or those activities matter to me? And so what we mean by that is, what is it about that activity that makes it enjoyable for you? You might think about things like being outdoors. Maybe you prefer to be with nature and outside of your home. Maybe it's physical activity. You like to move your body. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to be creative and express yourself. Could also be that you enjoy some quiet time alone. Or it could be the people that make you enjoy that activity. So who you participate with that matters to you. Maybe it's the opportunities to socialize and have fun with other people, make friends, and connect with friends and family while you're participating. So this is all really important because as we go through some of our ideas for exploring recreation this evening, it's all going to look different for everybody. And think back to those activities and the why it mattered to you, because that can often help us lead to exploring new activities once we know what it is we're looking for and what's more likely to be an enjoyable experience for us. So when we're talking about meaningful recreation, we want to also recognize that generally participating in recreation is good for us. There's lots of good things about participating in rec. Number one being fun. We're always about promoting enjoyment and having fun and having that sort of free time to be yourself. And we also know that it has some positive impacts on all the things you see on my screen here, like our health. That can look like emotional health, physical health, again, that social connectedness, and then on an individual level, self-identity and establishing our self-esteem and confidence. We're just going to look at a few of those more closely. Recreation is good for our physical health. Of course, the obvious ones are ones that directly involve physical activity. Health Canada recommends 60 minutes of physical activity a day for youth between 13 and 17 years old. And as we get older, those numbers might change slightly, but ultimately it's still recommended that we build physical activity into our lives because it has all kinds of health benefits, not only on our, the obvious things like muscles and bones, but it also helps with things like sleep, our energy, our heart health, even our brain function, and our mood. When we move our bodies and get exercise, we feel good. And so this is not only important for participating and getting our bodies moving, but also just the absence or reduction of some of that still time, that sedentary time where maybe we're at work all day or at school looking at our computers or watching TV. It's important to have a break from that, both for our minds and our bodies. Also good for our emotional and mental health. So participating in activities that we enjoy can help us with things like stress coping, self-expression, as we mentioned, and making a connection to other things, other places, and other people. It also can help us find purpose or meaning in our days and more broadly in our lives. And our self-identity is often linked to the activities that we do. So participating helps us explore and identify different abilities or traits within ourselves. It helps us learn about ourselves, what we're interested in, and form hobbies and friendships that also form our self-identity. And so these are some examples of different things that people identify as their roles within their recreation activities. So people might feel as though now I'm a teammate or a friend, I'm an artist, I'm a problem solver, I'm a leader. And those are all really nice, positive parts of our self-identity that we can get out of our recreation participation. Which also links into our self-confidence. So having opportunities through recreation participation and activities to explore our own abilities, our strengths, develop some of those activity-specific skills, and even a chance for us to assert our independence. Maybe our days are quite structured with other things. There might be things out of our control, but usually during our recreation or our leisure time is when we get to assert and develop some independence. Those feelings of mastery or sense of accomplished can really help overall improve your self-confidence and your self-esteem. And last, going back again, that social connectedness. Whenever I think about community recreation, I always think about some of those great opportunities, whether it's structured or not, to connect to other people. And through those experiences, you come out with something that you shared together. Maybe it's a shared interest or an experience that you had, and that can help form those bonds and connectedness that I think most of us look for in our lives. So to kind of sum up that piece around finding meaning in rec and leisure, these are sort of our key steps or tips when we're doing that. So one is identifying what matters to you. So what are the people, places, feelings, things that are positive for me that make me enjoy an experience? And then once we know what that is, it's also important to have a willingness to try things and explore and be open-minded. You might surprise yourself a little with the things that you would enjoy that maybe were brand new to you, or you didn't know you had access to, or weren't even sure that you would like. So that's having an open mind can go a long way. And then next, planning. So that could be in a more general sense that it's important for us to plan and set time in our week for these activities. We often schedule things that we're obligated and have to do, but we don't always schedule time for recreation and play and leisure. And that's really important because now we've just seen all the really positive things that it can do for our bodies and our minds. And so planning also means more specific things, like once there is maybe an activity that you'd like to try or a place you'd like to go, sometimes means asking some questions and doing some research to get the information you need to make that a positive experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about that this evening, as well as what it means to advocate for yourself when you are looking to try an activity that maybe there is a barrier to participating in. And last and most importantly, enjoying is the last and most important step. So being present in the moment, making sure that those activities are things that make you feel good and bring feelings of happiness. And then once that does happen for you, taking again that moment to go back to reflecting on what was it that made this a positive experience for me, because that can be really helpful information when you're looking to try new things and seek out new activities in the future. So that sort of leads us into our next section, where we're going to talk a little bit about exploring recreation in your community. And I'm going to hand it over to Melissa to share a little bit of insights and her experience exploring recreation in her community.
Thank you, Kristen. So I grew up in a town 3 hours from the city near Blue Mountain, and there wasn't a lot of adapted recreational activities for me, at least when I was little. So my family got me into swimming lessons with a one-to-one coach. I got to play t-ball, but I just had I hit the ball and somebody ran for me. So we had to work around some of those different obstacles. As I got older, finding more adapted experiences in recreational activities was a little bit easier. So I raced for track 3 skiing for a lot of my youth. And that was one of my best experiences. I love to ski. I love going fast. It was very, very freeing for me. So that was one of my favorite things to do growing up. I also rode with a therapeutic riding association and did competing on horseback riding, and enjoyed that a lot as well. And those were the main kind of recreational physical activities that I did growing up, which was awesome. I also volunteered a lot. I joined different societies. I did a lot of reading and going for walks. I found different physical activities that I could do around my town. I could do circuit training. I could do dryland training for my skiing. I got to help with my siblings' recreational activities. I was a manager for my brother's baseball team. So I was, in different ways, I was able to integrate myself into all the different recreational activities that were in my town, which was really great. It really helped my physical health. It helped my my mental health. And it really just got me involved in my community a little bit more. So the isolation that I found growing up wasn't as bad as it was before, maybe getting more involved and finding new friends and things as well. Being from a small town, as I said, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for people with disabilities to integrate into the community and have those recreational activities. But now that I live in Toronto, there's so much out there in this community that you can be involved in. So I found finding recreation to do in Toronto way easier than obviously growing up in Blue Mountain. But I found that recreation really helped me to become the person I am today and find my hobbies, find what I enjoy. And it really helped me through those kind of maybe some of the rougher times in my life. So I really, really think that getting involved and finding something that you love in your community is really, really important.
Amazing. It sounds like, given you're, facing the challenges of being in a smaller town, you still managed to find all kinds of different programs and activities to get involved in.
Definitely.
I think, not to put you on the spot, Melissa, but a nice segue into our next session might be to ask if you remember, because I don't know how young you were when you started some of those, but some of the activities like the skiing or baseball and things like that. Do you remember how you or your parents initially even came across those activities or organizations?
Yeah, my mom is a great advocate for me when I was younger. She still is. She was really determined to get me into activities like my siblings, so we could all be doing things. So mom got involved with Easter seals in my community. So she explored some of those recreational activities. Holland Bloorview was an awesome help as well, just for general information. We lived too far to be involved in anything at the center, but just getting ideas to where to look and organizations that she could contact was a really good way to be able to find programming and things that I could be involved in. And she was just really determined to find things that I enjoyed. So it really was my mom's determination and her willingness to dig through all the information that was given and find the information that really got me into all of these great programs.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all of those. Those are wonderful examples of participation and advocacy and exploration of how to find some of these things. It's a great point about even reaching out to somewhere if it seems like it's too far for you, but those are still great hubs of information. And often they have their own networks of individuals and organizations that they might be able to help navigate what would be helpful in your area and region.
Definitely.
So on that note, let's chat about what some of those options might be. So when you're exploring recreation in your community, there's different levels. On a smaller scale, you might think about your own neighborhood. So that could be as simple as, a park that's nearby. You can include shopping centers or entertainment venues if you have those, or even public libraries, not only as a destination itself, but sometimes public libraries also offer programs to their community, which is kind of one of those unique ones that people don't always automatically think of, but they can have some really great programs there as well. And then beyond your own immediate neighborhood, we can think of it on a level of regional or area specific recreation, and examples would be things like your community parks and recreation, or organizations that exist broadly across Canada, like a YMCA that have multiple locations in multiple regions and would offer programming depending on the area, whatever's the closest site to you. YMCA was an interesting discovery for us a few years ago at Holland Bloorview, that they offered a weekly teen night program at multiple locations in the Greater Toronto area, that if you showed your high school student ID card, you actually were able to access their facility for free every I think it was Friday or Saturday evening, regardless of whether or not you were a member at the Y. So that was kind of a neat thing. So there's always places that are worth visiting and revisiting to learn maybe things you didn't even know about them that might be available. And then on an even bigger scale, we think about provincial and national organizations that serve, again, more of maybe hubs of information. So examples being Parasport Ontario or Canadian Therapeutic Riding Association. So they can be extremely helpful to reach out to and connect you with what your local chapter might be, or even just if you have questions generally about the activity, who it's for, who can participate, equipment you might need, other things to consider, or even funding as well. So those are also great sources of information for exploring. Now, another thing is when you've decided on something, maybe you found something at a local community center, or maybe there's a particular event coming up in your neighborhood that you'd like to attend, there might be things to consider. And then as a follow-up, you might even want to be proactive and contact somebody by email or phone to ask questions so that you've got as much information as you can to, again, make sure that it's going to be a positive experience. So things to consider might be the physical space. So if accessibility is important to you, you might want to follow up and ask questions specifically about accessibility. Not only just asking, are you accessible, but giving some specific examples of what might be important: entrances, the waiting area, if there's a specific activity within a location you're hoping to access. Everybody should have some accessible change rooms and washrooms, but it depends on where you're going and what that means to them. So just asking specific questions. If you know of a space that works really well for you, you can kind of mirror what that experience is with your questions that you want to ask. Another great question to ask is, have guests ever had difficulties accessing your space? And then furthermore, how were they accommodated, or what did they do to resolve that? So that can help maybe identify some really specific ideas and things to think about that they may need to consider before. You might also want to think about the people. So that could be just for your own interests. So maybe you're a person who doesn't enjoy navigating large crowds. So this might also be important right now during COVID for people to think about, what are you comfortable with? So you might want to ask how many people typically attend this event or this program. And you also might want to ask about the people involved in the program, who coordinates it. facilitates it. You might want to know about their level of experience if there's something that's important to you. There is a difference between, if you're going to a private swimming lesson at an organization designed for individuals with disabilities versus signing up for a local Parks and Rec program with perhaps an instructor. It's their first time teaching in general. So understanding who's involved. And we're going to, again, talk in a minute about advocacy and what information might be important to be forthcoming or share with them to make it a more positive experience. You may want to think about the equipment. So is there special equipment I need to do this activity? And if there is there somewhere that I can access it or borrow it? So sometimes there is specific equipment involved, but you don't necessarily have to commit to purchasing it, especially if it's a really expensive piece of equipment and you don't know if you're even going to like it. You might want to, try and borrow and loan or rent something before actually committing to that activity and that equipment. So cost might be another thing to think about. So is there a registration or administration fee? And if that cost is above and beyond what you were hoping or needing it to be, you can ask if there's funding available to help. Community Parks and Recreation will subsidize some of their programs and activities. Sometimes there's external funding sources that people can apply to help offset some of the costs of recreation programs that they're interested in attending. You might want to think about the location itself. So for your own planning, how am I going to get there? How much time do I need to get there? You may want to think about parking as well. And from the point where your transportation ends to get to the building, is there things I need to consider planning for as well? And then after you've gathered all of your information, there's also sharing information with others, depending on the situation, depending on your comfort level with that organization or the person involved. And sometimes this can be really important when there are barriers or things standing in the way of participating that might be out of your control. But self-advocacy really just means that you understand your disability and are aware of your strengths, any potential barriers to participation, and that you're able to tell others what you need them to put in place in order for you to successfully participate in an activity, program, or event. So Melissa mentioned her mom being a great advocate for her. So I think probably she had a lot of conversations along the way to make sure that those activities did go well. And sometimes people have the best interests at heart, but also don't have all of the experience or knowledge to be a good support initially. So advocating and providing some education and just sharing what it is you need can go a long way. Ultimately, you are the expert in your own life. So who better to guide others and ensure that your individual experience is positive than you? So this sort of breaks that concept into two parts here with a really specific example. Again, may not apply to everyone or everywhere, but this is just an example of camping. So Sheila here loves to go camping. She knows that about herself. She's independent. This is the first time she's planning a camping trip all by herself for her and her friends. So she knows that from her experience, that she can put up her own tent and fix her own dinner. And she uses a wheelchair to get around. So she knows that she'll need an accessible campsite that's near an accessible washroom. More specifically, she may need access to a shower chair. So in this case, Sheila knows what her interests are and what her needs are, and then making sure that she's asking questions and communicating expectations. So Sheila calls the park to reserve the accessible campsite and requests that she be placed as close as possible to an accessible washroom. She'll ask if she can roll her chair into the shower, into the toilet stalls. And she'll ask if there is a shower chair there or if she needs to bring her own equipment. Again, this is a really specific example, but could be applied to other settings and other activities. The main message being thinking about what it is that you need, and then asking questions and communicating what your expectations are. So a couple other just thoughts around that concept is just, know before you go. So a little bit of research can help. The internet is incredibly helpful for some of this now. So you can find information on websites, not just website of the activity or organization itself, but there's also some person-to-person sort of review type websites and apps that you can use as well. So I put in a specific example there, the Jouer app. That one was designed for programs for children and youth across Canada. And it actually allows you to put in your location and see what activities are in your area. And then furthermore, people who have then participated in those are able to go on and write feedback kind of reviews, like if you're familiar with Yelp, and things to think about. So that's kind of a neat one that you may or may not be aware of. And then if you can't find the information that you need through the internet or through other people, then maybe specifically calling or emailing and asking your questions, planning ahead. Sometimes it can be helpful to just be aware of accessibility legislation if that becomes an issue along the lines of advocacy. So some provinces have passed their own legislation to address accessibility barriers. So it's more along the lines of knowing your rights. In Ontario, that looks like the AODA. And so being able to consult and ask questions if you need to confirm what it is that is expected of an organization or a public location. And lastly, you can think about your networks and information hubs. So of course, Hydrocephalus Canada is one of those information hubs to find some support and information. There's the Active Living Alliance, that's across Canada. March of Dimes is an organization we often work with. Ability Online, I'm going to share some info in one of the following slides as well. Easter Seals, Melissa mentioned, is a great organization that can also share information and supports. Holland Bloorview as well. We definitely support clients and families and individuals with disabilities well beyond the GTA. So that can also serve as a hub of information. So some specific resources, some of which I just mentioned. Ability Online is a network for individuals with disabilities to connect. Again, this is a great way to, if you have a specific question or just want to hear about other people's experiences or connect on common interests and help navigate and find community recreation, that can be a great community online. They've recently launched myability.ca, which is basically like a sub category of Ability Online, and that's specifically for teens with disabilities, which might be appealing to some of the individuals participating tonight. So I thought I would mention that one as well. Easter Seals offers the Access To card. So in addition to all of their other information and resources and programs, you can also apply to get an Access To card, which allows a support person to attend without having to pay fees. And that applies to all kinds of different entertainment venues. So you can look it up online and see what's in your area that uses the Access To card. I mentioned the Jouer app, which you can look up online, and of course you can download it on your phone. Helps you find different activities. You can kind of get a sense of their accessibility, other people's experiences, and you can also search by specific categories. So again, thinking back to what it is that you enjoy most, you can search by arts, camps, sports, things like that. March of Dimes, they offer a lot of information and programs related to social activities, recreation, and even travel. They can be really helpful with planning trips either out of province or out of the country if we get doing that more often one day. Parasport Ontario, also mentioned that one, another great hub if you're specifically interested in sports. They offer sort of try me sessions and special events that you can go out and participate, try new activities. They offer equipment rentals. So if there is a specific adapted sport equipment that you need for something or would just like to try, they have sort of daily, weekly, and monthly fees. They could also help with identifying funding if that's a barrier. And they also connect to specific sport leagues based on regions within the province. Again, if you're watching this and you're not Ontario, there could be something similar in your province. This is what we're familiar with, but you could also reach out to Parasport Ontario. These are all really well-connected individuals that can help you network in your specific area. Camps.ca is more specific to summer camps. They do go by day camps and overnight camps, and you can find things specifically by type, location, or even based again on your specific areas of interest. Anything else? Anything I've missed or you want to add, Melissa, before I jump into our last section?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I will try to keep us on track here so we can get to all of these questions. So our last topic that we're going to chat about a little bit is adapted recreation equipment. So again, adapted recreation equipment can be really helpful in terms of enhancing the experience or participating in the activity in general. And there's lots of different kinds. And again, just like different activities and programs, adapted equipment also can look different for every person because everybody's needs are different. So this is one specific example. So the activity being swimming, there's all kinds of different adapted swim supports out there. So it's really just a matter of determining what it is that would be most helpful for you. Again, if you're not sure, if you haven't had a chance to try swimming, if this is the first time, then having a conversation with one of those previous slides, those hubs of information and resources ahead of time. Melissa said she did swim lessons, so I'm sure there was some consult that went on early on to make sure she was comfortable and confident in the water. So here's just some specific visuals of different things that can help with people depending on what type of support they need. And there's also different levels of that. So some of these things could be used in combination as well. So next question, of course, everyone wants to know is where do I find it? So you know what activity, you know what you need, and now where do I get it? So sometimes you can actually access the equipment within the program or activity. So if it's a pool, they may have some of this on site. Or not, and then you'll have to source it elsewhere, which comes down below here. Some examples of programs that might include equipment, something like accessible sailing. They surely don't expect you to show up with your own accessible boat. So CanSail would be an example of an organization that provides accessible sailing. We work with Ontario Sailing Association with our adapted sailing program that we run with Holland Bloorview every year, and they provide all the equipment that the participants need. Therapeutic horseback riding is another example of one where your equipment would likely be included in that activity. The location itself may have equipment on site. So community rec centers or arenas may have some equipment. An example within Toronto Parks and Rec has certain arenas that have skating aids, that have ice sledges, that can be borrowed for any kind of free skate or sledge hockey or whatever program they're hosting. Bowling alleys even sometimes have accessible equipment in the form of ramps and things like that. So it's always worth, again, that phone call, asking those questions. You might be surprised what they do have available. Organizations in general that loan out equipment can also help. So they may not be related to the specific location or program, but you might be able to borrow or rent from them. Parasport Ontario, we gave that example. CADS, Canadian Adaptive Snow Sport. Melissa also mentioned Track 3 off the top. So Track 3 is specifically for children and youth, whereas CADS goes across the lifespan, so available to adults as well. They run out of multiple locations, different hills that exist, and they can provide individual instruction and support on the hill as far as the actual person. And then they also have the equipment, a lot of these locations, that they can make sure you have access to anything you need. And Holland Bloorview, another example, we do have a adapted equipment loan that we allow clients and families of Holland Bloorview to access so that they can explore and try some of these. These are also good ones if you're thinking about purchasing, so you know you want something for yourself. You can also reach out to them to find out, where do I get it? Do I need funding for this? Do you have some ideas? Where do people usually look? So again, keep that in mind, that you could also reach out to them just with questions. Okay, so we've got to our interactive gameplay time. On the topic of adapted sport and recreation equipment, we're gonna do a little activity called What is this? So I'm going to share a few pictures of some specific sport and recreation equipment, and I'm going to encourage you to guess what you think it is. And I believe Andrea is going to launch a poll to help us with that. So if something pops up on your screen, please do participate, fire off your answer, and we'll let you know if you guys are right. So our first one, what is this? Hopefully people are seeing this. If not, I'm going to read them out anyways. Your options are A, a hand cycle, B, a racing wheelchair, or C, a rickshaw. What do you think it is? All right, let's see what it is. Let's see if anybody guessed right. It was a racing wheelchair. So this is a really cool piece of equipment that can be used for track and fields. It has sort of a bucket seat in the front. You're almost like kneeling in it and leaning forward in front of the chair. You can see that little handlebar in front of her there, and that's both her steering and her brakes. And all the power is, of course, coming from her arms. When you see this, if you ever watch Paralympics, if you see them racing, they're just driving those arms a mile a minute, and they almost like punch the wheel. That's why she's got those gloves on there, because you're going too quick to even grab it. You just almost have to like quickly snap your hand down and back. Okay, let's go on to the next one. See if you guys can guess this. What is this? Do we think it's A, a hand cycle, B, an e-scooter or electric scooter, or C, a recumbent trike? All right, let's find out. It was the hand cycle. So this guy here has got his own hand cycle. They can look different from person to person, and from company to company that makes them. Sometimes you see them a little more recumbent, lower to the ground. Sometimes you're more upright. They're usually adjustable, so you can bring that arm piece closer, further away. They can adjust the seating, the tires. So again, looks different from hand cycle to hand cycle, as well as they can be customized for individuals to make them fit just right. And that's a great option for obviously getting some cardio and some strength workout in your day. And it's also just super fun to get outside. Biking has been a really popular one during COVID because it was something that could happen even when we weren't allowed to do organized recreation.
I had one when I was younger and I loved it.
Awesome. Yeah, they're super fun. Okay, let's try our next one. What is this? Give everybody a second to think about it. Here are your options. Is this A, a ski rack, B, a pool slide, or C, a bowling ramp? All right, let's find out. Bowling ramp. So this was one we mentioned earlier. Some bowling alleys have these available. Just makes it easier for people of all abilities to participate. We have a few of them at Holland Bloorview, extremely popular leisure activity. So that's another fun one. Okay, I close this out. Let's try our next one. What is this? I think I need to start stumping some more people. All right, I'm gonna give you your options. Is this A, a bathtub, B, an adapted sailboat, or C, an adapted golf cart? Bathtub, sailboat, or golf cart? What do you guys think? It was a sailboat. Okay, I think we've got just one more, and then I am eager to get to your questions, everybody. Okay. What is this? Kind of a funky looking one. Is it A, hovercraft, B, a power soccer cart, or C, a beach wheelchair? All right, let's find out what it is. It was a hippocamp or a beach wheelchair. So these can be helpful when you're in that kind of tough terrain on sand or wet sand. They're specifically meant for those kinds of conditions. There's also such thing as all-terrain wheelchairs that can be used for things like trails and hiking paths. There is such a thing. I was trying to trick people on, I guess, but the power soccer cart. There is sort of such a thing that exists. Looks different than this though. But yeah, this is a really neat piece of equipment as well, beach chair. Okay, I'm actually going to skip through our debrief questions that I had for you because I'd rather hear everybody else's question. So maybe forward to that and see if Shauna or Andrea, if you have any questions ready to go.
So I don't see any questions. There's just a lot of comments in the chat.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed the little quiz that you did. I only got 2 right. So I need to brush up on my activities. I just wanted to say that I had a chance to do wheelchair tennis for a little while, and I loved it. It was very engaged, like it was just a lot of fun, and all of the equipment was provided for me.
Great. Do you remember who that was through, Shauna?
It's through a group in Mississauga. Okay.
There was one that I actually didn't have on here, and if it's helpful for anybody for me to like send the lists through you, Shauna. Ontario Para Network was another Ontario-based one that is separate from Parasport Ontario, even though they have a similar. They specifically facilitate a lot of wheelchair tennis and wheelchair basketball.
I've tried wheelchair basketball as well. I don't have the stamina for it. There's a lot of wheeling involved. And I've tried sledge hockey as well. Again, you need a lot of upper body strength for sledge hockey.
Yes. A neat thing about sledge hockey is that there's variations in those blades that go underneath the bucket. So beginners are usually advised to have those blades spread out. There's 2 underneath your bum, and they spread them out a little further. But then if you watch the people on like the Paralympic team, they're playing on one tiny blade in the middle. So if like the amount of like tippiness and upper body strength to correct that is like, they're such power elite athletes to be able to do that with one tiny blade under them. I've only done it with the 2, and to me that was hard enough. So
me too.
If you like a challenge, it's a great sport.
So I don't see any specific questions here, just a lot of comments about what great information you provided. I actually knew what the beach chair was because I've used one when I was in the Dominican, and it was great
Amazing.
because I don't do well in the sand. I sink. My cane sinks, I sink. And using a walker, it's very hard to get across the sand as well with a walker. So yeah, it was great.
That's great.
Brought me right down to the water, and
how
I got to enjoy the
Shauna,
ocean.
when you said Dominican,
Mm-hmm.
so how did you come across the beach chair? Did you ask them specifically, or they just...
No, we were down at the beach, and my sister, who is very inquisitive and will ask anything, saw it, and she said, "What is this for?" And I said, "It's a beach chair to help people who can't manage the sand very well." And she said, "Okay, get in." And I'm like, don't we have to ask anybody if we can use it? Like, and she asked somebody, and they rolled me down, and it was great.
That's awesome.
So thanks very much, ladies, for sharing tonight. I don't see any questions, so I think we'll start to wrap it up. So I'll hand it over to Andrea.
Thanks so much, Shauna. I really enjoyed that tonight, and I wanted to thank our audience for participating. Special thank you to Kristen and Melissa for sharing such relevant and helpful information. A lot of comments in the chat about, especially the example that you used of the person camping and making decisions and getting information and advocating for yourself. That went over really well. So thank you for taking the time to be with us here tonight.